Hello, everyone. My name is Heather Brutz. I am the Transportation Program Director for the North Carolina Clean Energy Technology Center. This is part of the Sustainable Fleet Technology webinar series, which the Clean Tech Center does together with NAFA. This webinar is medium and heavy duty electrification. So I'm going to let April Smith briefly give some housekeeping about how to do Q&A. Before we start.
Thanks, Heather. Welcome, everyone. Like Heather said, you are joining the Sustainable Fleet Technology webinar series. Today, we're talking about medium and heavy duty electrification. Before we get started, we'll just cover a few housekeeping notes to help everything run smoothly. First, the session is being recorded, and a copy of that recording will be made available to you in the coming days. All attendees are currently muted to minimize the background noise. However, we do encourage your participation throughout the session. Please feel free to share your questions and comments using the chat or Q&A features in your Zoom toolbar. If you experience any technical difficulties during the webinar, don't hesitate to reach out to the NAFA team through the chat. We're here to assist. And now, to officially get things underway, it's my pleasure to turn things back over to Heather Brutz.
Thank you, April. So we do have some upcoming webinars. On December 11th, our next and final webinar of the year will be lowering carbon emissions with alternative fuels. And you can register at the NAFA website link that is listed there. The NAFA Institute and Expo is coming up in the spring. It'll be in Cleveland, Ohio, April 13th through 15th. I've attended this event many years, and it is a wonderful event that I highly recommend that everyone attend. Fantastic educational content, great networking opportunities. If you register now, you can still go and get the early bird rate. And so I recommend that everyone strongly consider going to that. Also, another great show is the Sustainable Fleet Technology Conference. That'll be in the Durham Convention Center in Durham, North Carolina, August 25th through 27th of 2026. So that was a little typo there. And so we put this show on every year. It is a fantastic show focused on ways to improve the sustainability of fleets. And so I hope to see you there. And we expect that registration will probably open up early in 2026. I'd like to give a thank you to our sponsor, eVerged. And without the support of our sponsors, we would not be able to do this webinar series. So today's speakers, we're going to start off with Jacob Richard and Mike Hines from CalStart. Then we will hear from Dan Rosenfield with Highland Fleets. And then closing out the webinar will be Cheryl Purefoy with Indigo. And so look forward to hearing from all of you. And then Jacob and Richard, would you like to go and share your slides?
Yes, I'll go ahead and start sharing. All right. So hello, how's it going? My name's Jacob Richard. I'm a technical project manager at CalStart. I'll be presenting with Mike Hines. I'm on the trucks and off-road team while Mike is on the bus team. And so what we're here today to talk about are kind of level setting the industry, from the zero emission truck side, from the zero emission bus side. We have these two awesome reports, the Zeroing In on series, the Zeroing In on zero emission trucks, and the Zeroing In on zero emission bus reports. Really, these reports help get a snapshot of the zero emission medium heavy duty sectors, how many deployments there are, what are the trends, really here to help inform policymakers, original equipment manufacturers, fleet owners, and everyone about different market and policy opportunities. And then the ZOZEP report is published twice a year, while the ZOZEB report is published once a year. Both of those will be coming out in the spring. The ZOZEP will be published in January, 2026. Mike could probably correct me if I'm wrong, but the ZOZEB usually comes out in February or March of 2026. But to get us going on the zero emission trucks, so this is data as of June 2025, just kind of level setting that there is a little over 59,000 zero emission trucks deployed in the United States. These are vehicles that are actively driving on roads. These aren't orders. These aren't, registered or commitments. These are actually on the road. You can see the majority of them are cargo vans, and there's steady increase going throughout we report on 6-month intervals here. Little bit of a slowdown here recently. This is mainly due to some, hesitancy around uncertainty at the policy level. State and federal regulations are kind of up in the air right now. But the other 5 sectors, the refuse, heavy duty truck, yard tractor, step vans, and medium duty trucks continue to move along really well. That dip is really shown in the cargo van segment. It's going to get a little bit more granular, right? There, you can see that cargo vans really dominate with the 52,000. However, my favorite sector to talk about is the yard tractors. While there is just maybe 2,000, there's only about 65,000 yard tractors in operation. So they are commanding about 7 to 8% of that market already. And about new sales, they're hovering around 10% or so, which is really exciting. Yard tractors, those are used in, warehouses and distribution centers to move trailers around. They have low mileage operations. They operate in a confined space. The charging infrastructure is a lot more, simpler to go with. It's really, an effective, useful application here. And today, it honestly makes sense. That total cost of ownership you see with yard tractors, they get that payback really quickly. And it really makes sense to do zero emission. I even talked to Penske about 3 weeks ago, and they say when they rent out their vehicles, when someone wants a yard tractor, they recommend the zero emission one right away. They don't even talk to fleets about diesel unless they ask for it. And then kind of looking at the states, every state has one, but I really wanted to focus on the top 10 states to really kind of show the diversity here. Did highlight North Carolina since this is NC State. But obviously California, #1, but Texas, Florida, 2 and 3 right there. They do have large truck stock populations. So it only makes sense that they have higher absolute numbers. But seeing states like Arizona and Georgia and Pennsylvania, and here, you're seeing deployments really across, the United States. Doesn't really matter where they are politically, where they are geographically. You're seeing deployments of all kinds of zero emission trucks all across the United States. When you do level that playing field a little bit, we do normalize these deployments. This really, each state has a different truck stock population. California and Texas have truck stocks of well over 1 million vehicles, while a state like Vermont may only have 150,000 vehicles in there. So we go ahead and we really look at that market share and we break it down by the lighter vehicles, medium vehicles, and heavier vehicles. They're really, get a little bit more of an apples to apples comparison between state. So when we do normalize it, we see Washington, Wisconsin creep up there, which is really exciting. These are states that have really leaned into it politically with, incentive programs, make-ready programs at the utility level, economic drivers to attract investment in vehicle manufacturing, batteries, and, other workforce areas for zero emission. So when you do this, it's just really exciting to see different states and states of all sizes again are really trying to drive the adoption to zero emission trucks. I think about 18 states have more than 1,000 deployments, and it's about 18 as well that have this normalized number above zero, where zero is that national average. If you do have a negative number, it means you're slightly below that national average. No one has a negative number below about negative 0.5 or so. So there are a few leading states here in this case that are really, driving that adoption here. And again, just to recap here, again, 59,000 zero emission trucks. You kind of have those top states, but really what I want to focus on is that last bullet is there are really specific applications today. the first and last mile delivery, the return to base, and the drayage, which is all that first mile delivery from the ports to like a distribution center. Those applications today are really ready for a zero emission truck. They're within that, ideal duty cycle of, where the ranges of the technologies are today. The only issue there is, right, when you have, these kind of short run applications, they're not driving as much and you're not going to recoup as much fuel savings, which is where you're going to see that total cost of ownership. So when a fleet is talking about wanting to adopt a zero emission truck, really it is about that TCO and they really want to see that payback within 3 to 5 years. The more you drive it, the more you're going to see it. But in these short run applications, that upfront cost is really the biggest deterrent as you need to shrink that delta to get that cost parity to that 3 to 5 year when you recoup that for fuel savings or maintenance savings. You're really going to see the majority of that in fuel savings. Financing and insurance, though, also remain high. This is honestly a really big deal. People are seeing insurance premiums for their zero emission trucks be even greater than the upfront cost. Usually you hear, oh, my upfront cost is 2 times greater. Well, we're seeing insurance about 3 times greater for a zero emission truck. Part of this is due to, the unknown residual value of the vehicle. Uh, Financiers are really hesitant with this, right? They really rely on data to drive what their lease payments are. And so that is another thing, you're trying to solve, residual value guarantees, pooled insurance programs, that help de-risk it across multiple fleets. Any of this type of stuff can really help drive adoption. Infrastructure in general really needs a bigger focus. The cost is really expensive. The long time from the moment you talk to the utility to when you get it in there, especially for these Class 8 vehicles, right? You don't need the level 2 charging. You need these big 250 kilowatt chargers to be installed at your site. So it can really take a long time, upwards of 2 years to get it installed. And then there's the lack of, public and shared charging across the United States. It's pretty built out in California, and there's a few corridors, I-5 and I-10 through, Oregon, Washington, New Mexico, and Arizona that are being built out. But really, across the United States, it's not there yet. Policy, we really need to move past these regulations that are kind of up in the air right now. California pulled back the Advanced Clean Fleets regulation. Advanced Clean Trucks is being challenged. And it's really up to states right now to lean into different policy levers that can help accelerate the market, right? On top of just, incentives to help lower the cost of the infrastructure and the vehicles. There's other things, an indirect source rule, a zero emission truck zone, that's happened in Portland, Oregon. And, it's happening a lot abroad, and, France and the Netherlands have really done that. There's economic drivers, there's planning, there's strategy documents that they can do to help coordinate at state levels. There's many different things that you can do at the state level that really help, alleviate these barriers. And then education, it's always going to be an issue, making sure everyone here is educated about the benefits of the zero emission truck and why you should be driving one and why you should care about that. And that's everyone from, the fleet itself to the dealer that's going to be selling it to the fleet, to the policymaker, to the OEM, the charge point operator, and all the stakeholders in between. We actually had a situation in Massachusetts where we had this Mass Fleet Advisor program. The fleet got really excited. They wanted to go buy a zero emission truck. They went to their dealer and the dealer said no. So, it takes everybody here to be educated on why you need to have a zero emission truck to really drive that adoption. I'm sure some of these are very similar to the bus market, but I'll hand it over to my colleague Mike Hines here to talk about the zero emission buses.
Thanks, Jacob. Do you want to run this since you have it up?
Yeah, I got it up, so I'll
Awesome.
keep pushing them.
Thanks so much. Appreciate it. Hey, everyone. Mike Hines, Deputy Director Transit for CalStart. So excited to be with you today and talk about our Xerion and Zeb series. Jacob kind of gave you the background on how we do this, how do we do these reports and kind of why we do them to give a snapshot of the market, where we're seeing improvements, where we're seeing kind of pace of adoptions. A little bit of insight into the transit one, because I think there's a few things that are unique. Is number one, it's very much a crowdsourced report. We are completely reliant on transit agencies, state DOTs, policy holders like FTA and others providing this data. There's no central clearinghouse for uh, where fleets are deployed, where they're getting ordered, where they're being funded. So every year we engage with as many partners as we can to pull this data together. So it's really a fantastic way to engage with the fleets to understand where they're at in their process of these adoptions, but also understanding kind of the challenges they have with how they're getting funded, where they're looking to make their adoptions, and again to kind of track the pace. So the numbers are really based on what fleets provide to us. So we feel the numbers are really solid in that sense. It's directly from the fleets. But at the same time, one of the things that we do know is that not every fleet tracks data the same way. And where we see some of that variance is that one fleet may say a vehicle is deployed, and that means it's actually running, it's on the street, it's in revenue service. Another fleet may say they have vehicles deployed, but for that particular fleet, that just means it's active in their fleet, but not potentially may not be in use. So just to kind of level set some of the numbers and that it does kind of vary, but it is directly driven from fleets. So there before you can see deployments in nearly every state. The Dakotas are holding out strong. So if anyone has any contacts in the Dakotas, let me know. Happy to have some conversations with them. But in general, as you can see, we have deployments in virtually every state, including Alaska, Hawaii, and we're seeing those numbers grow. So obviously you can see California leading the charge, New York, Washington, Texas. I'll get into that a little bit more, but so strong growth across the industry in the transit space. These are transit vehicles that can include public, private fleets, universities, and airports. So deployments in every state except the Dakotas, but we are seeing that continued growth. Next slide, please. So a few less deployments than trucks, which I'm sure Jacob loves. So 7,000 or so 40 foot or larger buses. So as of 2024, we were just under that 8,000 mark. You can see kind of the pace of adoption that we're projecting based on 2024 numbers. Now, it goes without saying that we have to anticipate some challenges in the path ahead, as the administration has different priorities in the zero emission space. So as we work for the next year's report, it'll be interesting to see where those numbers align. We've anecdotally continued to see growth in talking with some partners and OEMs and other folks in this space. But again, we anticipate some changes to this projection. But over 7,000, really over 7,500 vehicles, 40 foot or larger. So that's your 40 foot standard bus, your 60 foot articulated, your over the road coaches, what have you. And we anticipate that number will continue to grow. Next slide, please. It's not limited to large fleets. One of the things that we often think of in transit is just the big bus, your 40 foot and 60 footers. But we're seeing growth in small fleets as well. And a lot of that growth is more so in the medium duty vehicles or the smaller vehicles. So your paratransit fleets, your dial-a-ride systems. And a lot of that growth is really in those fleet types that are private fleets. So be it kind of airport shuttles, kind of rideshare things that you see. There's some industrial parks that have their own services. Microsoft, for example, is a great example. Airports, like I mentioned, continue to see continued growth there. But I wanted to point out too that universities is where we're seeing the largest growth. Universities are really interesting in the zero emission space because they are unique in many ways in terms of how they receive their funds, what they're able to do with those funds for vehicles. And oftentimes they look at the way they're not just looking particularly at a transit fleet. Universities in many ways are kind of like their own municipalities. So they're looking at their truck fleets, at their service vehicles, may have police, emergency services, transit. So that growth that we see in universities really is kind of a bellwether for not only just transit, but those fleets in general. And so that's one that we continually track because we see a lot of interesting things that universities are doing. So again, that growth is not limited to just large transit agencies, large buses. We are seeing it in small, medium fleets, in the medium duty space. And again, university fleets are definitely leading that charge. Next slide. Jake had kind of touched on this a little bit. Deployments in blue and red states, no better way to really kind of say it, but oftentimes in the transit space, zero emission is, in our experience, frequently tagged to California or Washington or perhaps Massachusetts. And while obviously California leads the charge in more ways than one here, we're seeing measurable growth in states like Florida, in states like Ohio, in states like Texas, Florida and Texas third and sixth, respectively. And what that really speaks to, at least for us in our experience, is this technology works. When agencies do their due diligence, when they do their fleet transition planning, when they engage all their stakeholders, internal, external, they do that level set planning, they're finding these options, these zero emission options, be it battery electric or hydrogen fuel cell, can work for their fleets. And that's why we're seeing these deployments. When you see a fleet doing one or two, that's usually a pilot. They're trying to test it out. There's a lot of data to suggest that many fleets may not move beyond that without some other kind of impetus to do so. But what we do see fleets across the nation when they do, 5, 10, 15, 20s, or if you're in your larger fleets like an LA Metro, New York MTA, that are ordering hundreds of buses at a time, that's because these vehicles work. You can easily say that, well, there's a mandate, they need to do this, they have to implement these things. And to some respects, that's true. But these agencies are testing these vehicles. They're doing that testing, they're getting them out in revenue service, they're getting them out in front of the public. And so what they're finding is these solutions work. And that's why we believe we continue to see this growth. And it doesn't matter if it's a blue or red state to kind of categorize them. We're seeing that growth continue. And again, Florida and Texas, they're great examples of leading that growth. And we expect to see more of that provided the landscape, both policy and funding supports that. Like I mentioned, progress continues, but challenges remain. So consistent year-over-year growth. We've done this report for several years now, and we can see that consistent level of growth. So that really speaks again to agencies doing their due diligence. They're checking out this technology. They're seeing what's worked for them. They're implementing the plans that they're doing in terms of fleet transition, and that they're seeing that it works. So that consistency is fantastic. It's particularly interesting in the transit space. Those of you who are involved in the transit space, it's a small community, right? Transit agencies they talk about what works, what doesn't work. Transit typically doesn't like to be first in new technology, so they want to make sure that things work for them. And what we see a lot of in the transit space is information sharing. So fleets are talking about how they implemented, how they did their planning, what technology worked for them, what didn't work for them, and they're sharing that knowledge. And I think a lot of agencies are benefiting from that knowledge share. And again, that's why we're one of the reasons we're seeing that consistent year-over-year growth. Funding is always a challenge, and this is not just for zero emission buses, for transit in general. Again, if you're in the transit space, you know this, you're always looking at funding for operations, for dealing with staffing challenges, procurement, vehicles, ICE, zero emission, what have you. There's any number of things that are contributing or challenging you for funding. So that's always going to be a challenge. Agencies have to figure out how they can leverage funding. And most agencies are having to leverage multiple sources of funding. And depending what those funding sources are, there may not be alignment in terms of when they're available year over year. One year an agency may be seeking federal funding, and the next year they're going out for state funding, BW mitigation, for example. So agencies are always trying to balance those funding asks and try to figure out how they can leverage funding to get the zero emission buses and make this transition. That really goes back to the requirements for robust planning. The better planning that you can do up front in your fleet transition planning will put you on a better path when you're asking for funding. And also keeping in mind your plan is it's not a straight line, right? It's an S curve to get you to where you want to go, whether that's fully zero emission, a mixed fleets, or maybe you just want to do your pilots and see where it goes. So understanding where you're trying to accomplish or where you're trying to get to in terms of your transition will help you kind of better align funding, because we know that funding piece is a challenge. The manufacturing market remains constrained. Really, if we're talking availability for federal dollars, you have New Flyer and Gillig. BYD Ride, they are not eligible for federal dollars. So essentially, we have two manufacturers competing for business. It's a small industry to begin with. They're not producing a lot of vehicles. So agencies really have to figure out when they're going to procure vehicles, how they can get in the queue, working with these manufacturers. And then also the manufacturers have to understand, in which they do, is that agencies are required, in most cases, based on the funding source, to have those vehicles for 12 years or at least 500,000 miles. So it really kind of poses some unique challenges in terms of the market. There are efforts underway to strengthen the market. We're happy to see Eldorado ENC return. They're winding back up production. We've had interest from European manufacturers like Solaris, who's been engaged with fleets like King County Metro in Washington and SFMTA in San Francisco. So there's a lot of efforts underway to kind of expand that market base. And so that's great for agencies. Um, and also, I think it's like I mentioned, the priorities for funding. Understanding what you're trying to fund and where you're going to get the funding from is really key. And probably the last thing is that policy and funding support at the federal and state level is key. If you look at states like California, like New York, like Massachusetts, they also have strong policy supporting zero emission. At the federal level, under the Biden administration and IIJA and things like that, a lot of support for zero emission. Like I mentioned earlier, we're starting to see a shift at the federal level under the Trump administration. So understanding what that means for transit agencies is still a work in progress, but we anticipate that there will be some challenges there. But again, that policy and funding is going to be really key to help these transit agencies continue to move the needle in zero emission. And that's what we have for you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jacob. Thank you, Mike. And so next up will be Dan Rosenfield with Highland Fleets.
Great. Thanks, Heather. And thanks, April. I'm going to do the obligatory sharing of screen. Perfect. Is that coming up over the webinar? Great.
Looks good.
Awesome. Well, hey everyone, I'm Dan Rosenfield. I'm with Highland Electric Fleets. Great to see some familiar faces and the familiar names in the audience. Sky, Alyssa, thanks for joining. Highland does electrification as a service. So we help cities and school districts reduce their cost, timeline to electrify their fleets by providing a turnkey solution. So today I want to talk to you about some best practices for actually building out your electric fleet and financing the fleet. All of you have joined this webinar because you want to electrify or have curiosity, and there are a lot of reasons why you should electrify. Better air quality, it's definitely lower operating costs, between 20 to 40%, depending on the vehicle. Having an EV is more modern, and it's easier to push upgrades over the air, sustainability goals, and quieter, which is especially better in our work, as the majority of our fleets are schools. So there are a lot of hurdles in transitioning your fleet, even a portion of your fleet, to electric, whether that's funding, infrastructure, choosing the right vehicles, training your staff and technicians. But I think the two most important hurdles that you have to really think about, that you want to consider as you're electrifying your fleet, is risk mitigation and interoperability. This is a new technology that you are launching into your fleet, and you want to make sure that you're working in a way that you are reducing the number of times that you break ground, reducing the number of technical issues, and reducing any long-term ancillary costs. And second is that interoperability piece. I'm sure that you all have gone to an AFA event, or you're sold a different charging company, probably on the daily basis if you're a fleet manager. But you very much want to ensure that there's interoperability between the charger and the vehicle, because that'll make sure that your vehicles will actually work and be route ready when they're ready to go every morning. But also, as you're trying to get buy-in and growing your fleet over time, if they're not interoperable, you're going to lose the trust of your staff. Highland provides turnkey fleet electrification, so we have expertise in every single part of the electrification process. Our customers are cities and school districts. We're in 130 plus school districts, cities, transit agencies, airports around the country, about over 1,000 vehicles under contract. So I want to share just what we've learned in running all of these fleets across the country today. So where to start? The team at CalStart briefly mentioned, but you got to dig and you got to build out your depot. A few key points with this is the depot and utility process often takes between 12 to 18 months. So you want to identify a champion at your utility who is dedicated and understands the intricacies of electrification, especially smaller utilities we've seen. This may be their first electric project. We see that with a lot of our electric school bus initiatives. And so identify that champion who will be open to, yes, the load the electric vehicle and the electric vehicle fleet will take on, but also the opportunities for potential V2G and revenue for the utility. There's a lot of pieces, as you can see from this timeline, from determining feasibility to working with utilities to the permitting to the EV chargers. And you want to make sure that you are minimizing the timeline and ideally minimizing the number of vendors that you're using for each one of these pieces. Otherwise, you're going to run into increased costs, increased time, and most importantly, you're going to have a fleet that's not going to work, an electric fleet that's not going to work because each one of these pieces are not talking to the other. In terms of choosing your fleet, the 2 points I want to get across here is first, ensuring interoperability. There's probably a different vendor of vehicle and charger who comes knocking on your door every single day. And you want to make sure that the the OEMs and chargers are reputable. I'm happy to share offline some vendors, brands who you may want to consider and you may want to take a second look at and ensure interoperability between the charger and vehicle. And the second is as you are growing your electric fleet, I think it's very easy, and we've seen this especially with cities. They love to find the one vehicle that they're going to electrify, the one charger they're going to electrify. Instead, it's better and more effective to pilot with one small department and a department that you can really test out. So something like code compliance, something like maintenance vehicles, where it's high idle, it's short routes typically. School buses are another example. It's a set route, high idle, and then identify the best practices, identify and integrate the maintenance into your current fleet, and then grow your fleet from there. In addition, as I'll mention in just a minute, if you pilot with one department rather than say a single vehicle here and a single vehicle there, you'll get better prices because of bulk purchases. I want to touch on the future of EV fleet financing. So the days of one large federal grant for a vehicle may be changing, and as we've seen, are currently changing. And so what does the future look like? How do you still achieve a electric fleet using new financing models? There are three key points. One is utilizing private financing. Second is leveraging local funds and stacking incentives. And third is ensuring a low total cost of ownership. So with local funds and incentives, there are certain tax credits that are expiring in the next year. Make sure you take advantage of. Ideally, there are private partners who can take advantage of those tax credits, pass along those to a public sector. That reduces upfront capital and upfront costs. Second is grants and incentives. As part of what we do, we write grants and incentives, incentive applications at no cost for all of our customers. And we're able to stack different incentives, and we understand the timelines of different incentives and strategize which incentives are the most beneficial for your fleet. Second is private financing. The future of financing an electric fleet is going to be a public-private partnership that reduces your risk and you're able to share the costs. Having a public-private partner, having a private partner if you're a public fleet, you're able to leverage the speed and adaptability of the private sector while ensuring that you're producing a good fleet for your citizens in your community. Second also is in private financing is shifting CapEx to OpEx. As we mentioned in the webinar earlier, these are major capital incentive projects to electrify your fleet. And so you want to ideally work with someone or a private partner who is going to be able to potentially take on the initial upfront costs and then split it into payments over time or free up your capital. And finally, ensuring a low total cost of ownership, interoperability. I think that's the third time I've said it, but if you ensure interoperability, it'll reduce your downtime, which is very important to reducing your costs. Also, to ensure low total cost of ownership, you want to leverage economies of scale. So whether you're buying and leveraging pilots, whether you're working with a private partner who has a lot of fleets and can lower the costs, leverage economies of scale to get better pricing. We've seen in our experience that OEMs are willing to work with fleets to get better pricing if they commit to a certain kind of book of business over time. Public-private partnerships, 3 key benefits. First, they reduce the unknown cost. A private partner can ensure a common payment, the same payment every year. They can run certain parts of the technology and technology stack. And then third, they can just get it done a lot quicker. If you hold a private partner accountable, whether you go through someone like Highland or another industry partner, you're able to hold them accountable, hold them to a contract, and they're able to work at a private sector pace. Federal funding opportunities. There is still funding available, especially on the school bus front. So there's some remaining funds available from previous EPA rounds, and then we anticipate there should be a 4th round of the EPA Clean School Bus opening in the coming weeks, and also the 30C tax credit. Just a factual, our business model. So the Highland business model is one bundled performance-based contract, 10 to 15 years, depending on the state and the type of vehicle. We have one annual fee, and that includes everything from the vehicle to the chargers to the implementation to the maintenance, and then we have ongoing support. Also want to highlight, we are the official electric school bus provider of the LA 28 Olympics. So I'm also happy to chat with anyone about what we're learning through building out this fleet. I am a career JV cross-country runner, so this is the closest thing I'll ever get to any sort of athletic achievement. But we are supporting the LA 28 games with 500 school buses from around LA and actually surrounding states as well. But we'll be working on site energization, project management, all the installation, as well as the daily operations. So that'll be a huge public-private partnership and huge fleet that we're going to be running. We're excited to take on this task of showing off the United States. Some key takeaways. First, leverage public-private partnerships to ensure speed and stability. Second is planning ahead to reduce your costs. Dig once, and that'll reduce your long-term costs. And finally, simplify your vendors. So reduce the number of vendors and hold them accountable. Thank you, and happy to answer questions after.
Thank you so much. So we are going to move on to Cheryl Purefoy. If you just give me a moment, I'm going to share my screen. And let's see. Okay. And, oh, okay. So, okay, sorry about this. And okay. And so hopefully that looks good for everyone. And so Cheryl.
Heather, we're not seeing your
We
screen yet.
can't see your screen.
You're not, okay. Let's go.
We see you working really hard.
Yeah, let's see.
There we go.
And then from the beginning. Okay, how are we doing now?
I think we're there.
Okay.
Just need to go into presentation mode.
Just swap your screens, Heather.
Okay. And there we go. How are you now?
All right. Yeah, there we go. All right, perfect. So I will just let you know when I'm ready to advance. So good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for inviting me. I appreciate you giving me this opportunity. My name is Cheryl Purefoy. I'm the Deputy Chief Operating Officer at Indigo, located in Indianapolis, Indiana. I've been here for about, since 2018. Great speakers before me. Going to be some tough acts to follow, but I'm going to be presenting a kind of a different perspective, just from a transit's perspective in our fleet electrification and some of the decisions in the past that we've taken down for Indigo. When we started this process, one of the things that we did is we actually went to the community and we asked for them to support us. We were successful in being able to come up with a process for income taxes to funnel into our organization on a regular basis. We had a referendum that occurred, and we're really excited about that. And in that process, we also decided that we were going to move forward as an organization with zero emissions for our fleet. Next slide, please. As we were going through that process, we wanted to make sure that we had all of the elements in place. So one of the first things that was mentioned, I think Dan had talked about making sure you had the champion with the utilities. We actually did that early on in the process. We had an older facility, but in that facility, we already had some things that were set up in place. We had a pretty expansive solar array, so we were going to be utilizing that and leveraging that to help to operate some of the buses that we were going to be bringing on board. We have put in 6 switchboards with 12 transformers. And one of the things that we were really pleased about is the fact that we have independent power lines redundancy as far as power sources to the facility. So if one of the sources went down, we were still able to be able to charge our buses. So that was something that was very, very good for us. We did not have to put in a substation. We were fully equipped when we started down this track with our electrification strategies. The last photo on the far right is just the inside of our depot. We have currently 56 chargers at 200 kilowatts for the BYD. That's our electric bus OEM. And as we look at our strategy going forward, our plan is to increase that to approximately 144 additional 80 kilowatt chargers as we move forward with our electrification of our fleet. Next slide, please. So with the fleet strategy, as I mentioned, that we had the referendum that occurred in 2014. We made the decision in 2015. And so we actually took action as an organization. And that action was to go out and we purchased 21 refurbished Gillick buses. And they were refurbished with the company of CCW, using some Tiger funding. So that was an opportunity for us to get our feet wet in the electrification process. With that, we identified that those buses did not have the battery power that we needed. We had to put them on very short routes. So we were what we refer to as trippers. We did a lot of tripper routes. We weren't able to go much further than 75 to 80 miles with any fully charged bus. So we utilized those buses. I actually did a lot of lessons learned and were able to move forward with our strategy as we identified what we needed. What we needed were larger batteries, larger battery capacity, so we'd be able to have a larger range, be able to support the routes that we had in our infrastructure. As we started our next phase, which would be opening up our BRT lines. Our first line was our red line. And as we were negotiating and looking at the buses that we wanted to operate and service those lines, we looked at 60-foot buses and we landed with BYD. And we started the order process of 31 buses of BYD 60-foot buses. I think earlier Mike had talked about the fact that transits really don't like to be early adopters. Well, we don't, but we did it anyway. We were kind of trailblazers on a lot of things, and I'll share some of those, a couple of more of those things as I continue on in the presentation. But most organizations wouldn't buy an entire fleet of buses, battery electric buses, when they hadn't tested the technology, hadn't tried it in their systems. But we wanted to be able to do that. We had an opportunity. We moved forward with it and purchased the 31 BYD 60-foot articulated buses to support our red line. That red line opened up in 2019. And as soon as we opened up, we realized and recognized that the commitment of the battery range or the mileage on those buses was not able to be met. So we worked very, very hard with our OEM, BYD, to come up with some solutions, some strategies on how to fix that, both with our equipment as well as some other opportunities within our infrastructure. So as we move forward, the next wave of buses that we needed to purchase, we were committed to, again, a fully electric fleet. So we moved forward with the Purple Line buses, and we purchased an additional 28 buses starting in 2022. Again, that was to support a fully electric BRT line with our Purple Line process that opened about a year ago. It was November of 2024 that opened. But as we were speccing those buses, we looked at the lessons that we learned from the first 31 buses, and we identified a couple key components that we were able to add to those buses. Number one, we added heated driver seats. So we had the operator barrier. So when the driver was in the seat, they had their cabin and they had the control of their temperature, so they could stay nice and toasty in there. And then we could have some controls, a governor on the main cabin, and help mitigate some of the draw on the SOCs for the rest of the bus. Additionally, we installed hybrid auxiliary diesel heaters on the buses to help offset some of the draw on the SOCs as well. So for the 28 buses, we put those two additional lesson learned deliverables into those buses, and we actually have seen some deliverables with those. As we continue to move forward, the landscape for OEMs in the bus arena really changed, and the Buy America requirement really changed how we were looking at what we needed to do as an organization. Additionally, we found that we were not able to, even with the other strategies that we had put in place, we weren't able to meet the ranges that we needed to be able to fully implement our COA, our comprehensive operation process for the community. So we actually had to pivot. For our Blue Line buses, we pivot and we're not going with fully electric buses. We had originally spec'd to have 55 battery electric buses, but we had to change that and go to hybrid buses. So we are moving forward with 18 hybrid buses, and those are in the process of, we're finalizing the contract right now. So we should be moving forward with those, and we will start production next year and have deliverables. The delivery of those buses in 2027. Those were our 60-foot articulated buses. And as another part of our strategy is our 40-foot battery electric strategy. In 2026 and beyond, we actually have a board action item that's going this month to purchase one bus from 2 different manufacturers of 40-foot BEBs, so we can actually test the waters in a little more controlled pace than having an entire line that we would have like we did with the red line, and fully going full force with implementing an entire line of 40-foot battery electric buses. Next slide, please. This is just kind of a graphic of all of our lines, how they are interlined. With the red line and the purple line, we have 13 stations that we share, and all of them actually do come together in our downtown transit center. It just gives you an idea of the width and the direction of our lines and how we are operating within the city. Next slide, please. I shared a little bit, there's one more click for that, Heather, because my pads didn't show up. There we go. One of the things I shared earlier was the fact that we changed some of the equipment when we ordered the next order of BYD buses, the 28 buses. We made some changes. We did the heated seat, and we did the auxiliary heater. We also worked with our OEM, BYD, and installed en-route charging. So at the near end line of our red line, they installed a charging station there. At the end of the line of our purple line, they installed the charging station there as well. And then the third charging station that was installed was at our downtown transit center, where all of the lines come into, so we'd have an opportunity charging for any of our battery electric buses that do come down to our centralized transit center. So those are just some things that we did because we really wanted to make sure that we could maximize the utilization of those buses and actually help reduce some of the service interruptions that we were having because the buses weren't making the range, we were having to swap the buses out. That increases our operator requirement. So the miles on the buses, just a lot of different challenges that we were facing, and the opportunity charges in the route with adding those charging stations did give us an opportunity to extend the SOCs and the time that we had those buses and availability, we had the buses out on the routes. Next slide, please. I did talk a little bit about some of the challenges that we faced. Clearly, the range was the biggest issue. Our contract originally was for 275 miles on a charge, and we were not able to meet that. And again, that's some of the things that we put in place to try and offset that. In addition to the range, there were some other things that we looked at, the charging time. So when we did have operators that were out there in the field, we didn't know how long there was going to be some dwell time, how long they were going to have recovery time at the end of the line with construction. I know everybody is very familiar with construction in cities, and if the transits are, if the buses are at any way detoured or have their routes impacted, they do not have enough time to be at the charging station where there's a significant amount of time that they would be able to get a charge that would give enough bump that they would stay on the road longer. So that was one of the challenges as well. Again, we were early adopters, so there weren't a lot of folks out there that had a maintenance team. There were not a lot of folks out there that had trained, qualified high voltage electric vehicle technicians. We also in the Midwest, it's cold here, it snows, and we can have 3 seasons in one day. It happened last week, and that happens often here. So we needed to make sure that we could plan for those things and put in place some things that would mitigate some of those challenges. In-route charging, if our operators weren't doing all of the components and elements that are required in order for us to get a good charge, the alignment, the kneeling, the neutral, all of those things that they needed to do, we were having some problems with being able to get the opportunity charging. So those were some of our challenges. Next slide, please. Before I get to some of the solutions, I wanted to share with you a little bit as we changed our fleet, what it looked like pre our low to zero emission commitment to our current. So as you can see in 2015, diesel vehicles composed about 81% of our fleet, and currently it actually is about the composition of about 51% of our fleet. So there was a 30% swing in the composition of our fleet from diesel to hybrid or BEV. So alternative solutions, moving towards that low to zero emission initiative that we as an organization are quite committed to. Next slide, please. All right, so let's talk about some of the solutions that we implemented. We implemented a driver e-bus training and train the trainer program. That was very helpful because with our BRT lines, we had center boarding. So we had boarding that was not curbside. We had stations that are in the middle of the street. So that was new to not only to our operators, but it was new to the community. So there was a lot of things that we needed to do as far as training for the operators. So we actually purchased and we were able to acquire some simulators. We put our routes in the simulators, and we were able to do some of that training with our operators. That was very helpful, and we saw a lot of deliverables from that. Understanding our ranges. Once we actually start getting some data based on what we were doing live, because again, there were not a lot of folks in the industry that were doing what we were doing at the level that we were doing it. So we had to be our own data miners and look at what we were doing and to make that evaluation so we could change the length of our routes if we needed to. Is that block too long? Do we need to change it because of weather conditions? And those are some of the practices and initiatives that we put in place. We did a lot of coaching coaching with our operators about the regen braking process and monitoring that. We actually station folks at the beginning of a new pick, because when you get a new pick, you've got every 4 months we have new operators that might pick a different route. They might have worked or operated an electric bus the previous pick, and they might not have. So one of those things we wanted to do, we wanted to make sure that the folks that were behind the wheel were fully equipped. So we implemented some training to help address that. And so that was very successful in working with that. And then I already talked a little bit about the inductive charging, that we worked very closely with our OEM for them to provide that for us at 3 locations on our properties. And on the maintenance side of the house, again, there were not a lot of technicians out there that were in this field. So we looked at OEMs, and we looked at the OEMs, and we got training from their technicians. We were really positive and successful in that. As a matter of fact, a couple of their technicians found us to be an employer of choice. And so they came and started working for us on a permanent basis. That doesn't normally happen, but it was pretty exciting that we were able to glean that kind of expertise and then build some of our programming even further with that. We added a new job classification, high voltage technicians. We added 12 of those folks into our group. We added high voltage supervisors to help with that process. We increased the wages because, at a higher skill level, we wanted to make sure that folks were compensated appropriately for what we were asking them to do. Of course, the training that we were putting in place for them. There was one thing that we were really excited about. We actually went to a partnership with one of our community colleges, Ivy Tech, the Department of Labor, and our local union, when we created an apprenticeship program. The apprenticeship program, it has 2 prongs. One is for the operators, that they have some folks that they'd be able to help them if they run into problems in the field, but also for the purposes of this conversation, more so the apprenticeship program, the apprentice for mechanics. So it's a 2-year program, and we actually train them in-house. We also utilize some of the training courses through the community college, Ivy Tech. When they finish with the courses, if the 2-year program through our program, they have a diesel certificate. If they take 9 more course hours, they would have a technical certificate, and then 10 more course hours, then they would be able to have an associate degree. And that's all covered under the apprenticeship program. So again, we weren't able to hire the talent off of the street. So we were fortunate enough to start a program and a process where we could homegrown our own talent. Most recently, we were able to add on a high voltage track for our apprenticeship program. So in addition to the 2 years, we've added an additional year. So when they finish that additional year, they will be high voltage technician, the highest skilled technician that we would have in our maintenance department. So we're really excited about that. And as soon as we are in the process of getting that finalized, and as soon as the government is reopened, we should have that signed pretty soon. We're very optimistic about that. So next slide, please. So to conclude, let's talk about takeaways. There was a lot of takeaways, but really, you don't know what you don't know. There are some subject matter experts. We did not have a lot of subject matter experts when we started this, and we became subject matter experts, if you will. We actually built a high voltage department. We went from no technicians to a department of 16, and we're excited about that. Engage your utilities. Talk to as many people as you possibly can. Make sure that you are including the frontline folks, because their input is very valuable as you're trying to build everything out. That's very important. When you're looking at getting into electrification, one of the things that we did, again, we went completely in. It was all or none for us. But there are some some organizations that won't be able to do that. Get 1 bus, get 2 buses. That will give you an opportunity to see if it fits your needs and be able to adjust as you need to. So those things are just, again, some of the things that I've already talked about: the trainer program, the apprenticeship program, and the auxiliary heaters as far as supporting the equipment. So with that, I think that's my last slide. There we go.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
So I saw that we had some questions come in while people were chatting. I'm actually going to start with a question of my own. And I think some of you already talked a bit on this, but I was hoping maybe you could elaborate a little bit. Do you have any advice on working with your utility? And so this could involve like what rates you might choose, how do you manage demand charges? Also infrastructure planning. Anyone want to give
Well,
your
I,
quick
I mean,
input?
I can share, but when we at our facility, we really engaged our utilities, but it was pretty much a done deal. We already had the infrastructure. We already had the redundancy as far as power source to the building. They just did kind of a fact check. This is what we wanted to do. This is the capacity we wanted to be able to support. And it said, yes, you are more than capable. You are more than able to be able to support what your initiatives are. So we were very fortunate in that from that perspective.
Anyone else have any thoughts on that question?
Yeah, Heather, I'll just add quickly too. I mean, I think the utility piece, the most important thing is engaging early and often, even if you're not quite sure what your path is. Begin the conversation with your utility. Again, just speaking from the transit side, because that's my area, my realm. It's remarkable how many agencies just have never had to have a conversation with utility, right? It's just not something that comes up in daily operation. So figuring out who your utility is, what your kind of plan is, even if you don't have it, you've not done the transition plan, you're not ready to go. If you have some semblance of what you're looking at, have that conversation with the utility earlier than you think you need to. And more often than not, you'll find in most cases, the utilities have staff, particularly now, we're seeing more and more, have staff who are experts in this space, who want to engage with you, but they can't help you if they don't know. So engaging with them early and often is really key.
Heather, the only thing I'll add from our experience with school bus fleets is maximize the upgrade. So if a project is going to require a new transformer, great. How can we maximize the number of vehicles with that upgrade to be most cost effective?
Great. So we had some questions come in. I believe this first question came in during the CalStart presentation. And so someone asked the question about Ford leaving the market. So if you could just clarify on that.
No, they're not leaving the market.
Okay.
They might be
Someone
scaling back
someone
a
might have
little bit.
misunderstood.
They
Yeah.
think they're delaying their next gen to 2028. But they're not leaving. Chevrolet though is leaving. They took away the bright drop about 3 weeks ago.
Yeah. Okay. And then there was also a question regarding insurance and commercial insurance for zero emission trucks and zero emission buses. And so how does the insurance industry have anything to say about what it's going to take to reduce the disparity in rates between battery electric and internal combustion engine vehicles?
Yeah, so to answer that, I would say it's more considered short term. And what would it take? It takes residual value data, and that's something that will eventually solve itself, as there really is not a secondary market. No one really knows what the resale value of these vehicles are because they're not there yet. And therefore, a lot of insurers are treating that residual value as zero. So they think there's so much risk in it, and if there's higher risk, they're going to have the larger insurance premiums. But if over time, if you're able to de-risk it and get more data on it, we have this really good approach of the component cost, right? We know what battery degradation is, we know what the chassis and the cab and everything, but if you kind of add together those component costs over time, uh all of them have value at 3 and 5 years, just maybe individual value. And so really, we are on a endeavor to educate these financiers of don't treat it as zero, treat it as, you know, 30% of the original cost at 3 or 5 years. That actually makes a huge difference. But it's going to get solved eventually. But something we're trying to work on is how do we speed that up, right? Because it is impacting the market it is today.
Thank you. Then we had some questions and comments about heating. And I think this was asked specifically for regards to buses, though it could potentially apply to other sorts of vehicles as well. And so what are some of the options available for keeping drivers and passengers comfortable in a battery electric vehicle? And what are some of the pros and cons of the different options available?
Well, I can take a little bit of that. I see that an auxiliary heater was not our first choice, but we really did not have an option other than missing service. So that was not something that we were willing to do for our customer experience. So we looked at a lot of different alternatives, and it's a hybrid auxiliary heater. It takes about 4 gallons of fuel. So it's not a large amount of fuel that we're talking about that is utilized on the vehicle. We do, and that's what we did with the heaters. And I see the other part of the question as far as airtight glass, the glass insulation. I'm not sure about the glass insulation, but we did do a driver's barrier, which actually it is enclosed. So that's why I said that's why we put the heated driver's seat in there. They have an enclosure, so when they're closed in there, they're pretty warm. And they control their area as much as they want to, or as they want to make it as warm as they'd like to. And it doesn't adversely impact the main cabin and draw on the SOC, because that heater, that heated seat is a separate element.
Thank you. And Mike, I think you had some thoughts perhaps on this topic as well.
Yeah, thanks, Heather. I'll just add too, there is component testing underway in industry to do truly zero emission heaters. So you don't have a zero emission bus with a diesel fuel fired heater. One example, like I mentioned in the chat, uses bioethanol. So there's testing underway currently right now. Shameless plug, CalSTART is engaged with that. So that's one of the reasons why I mentioned it. But we are working with transit partners in the Pacific Northwest who have climate challenges in terms of hot and cold and all that kind of fun stuff. So testing that out. And we've had a lot of conversations with transit agencies kind of across the nation in terms of where they're at in this space, what they're looking for. So the goal really is to kind of develop a solution that works for multiple agencies. And then I think the question would be whether that's something that the manufacturers are putting in because it's spec'd out in procurements, or it's a component that transit agencies have the opportunity to utilize as they see fit in then retrofitting their vehicles once they're procured.
But from a transit agency's perspective, we definitely would be interested. At the time that we were going through the process, we had that option, and so we needed to move forward. But we would definitely be open to anything that would make us move that much closer to the zero emission initiatives.
And then I have a question, and and Cheryl, you talked a little bit about this, but when it comes to training, where were you working with any local community colleges in terms of providing training to your technicians, or were there other resources that you would recommend that people look at when looking for resources for training technicians?
So when we started, there was no one that was doing any training in high voltage. As a matter of fact, the community college came to us, and we actually helped them build their curriculum. So that's one of the reasons why we have the apprenticeship program in collaboration with the Department of Labor. What we did is we leveraged our OEM. Part of our contract is that their technicians came and actually resided with us over a year on site, full time. We actually had 2. And from that process, a lot of the equipment was the buses were under warranty. So any work that was done, if it needed to be done, it was under warranty. But our technicians had the opportunity to shadow them the entire time. And then from that, we were able to, as components went out of warranty, our folks were able to start doing more work. And we got the training basically from the OEM's staff that was that they sent here from their operations. So.
Thank you. And let's see. So it is 3:10. Looks like the questions are slowing down. I'm going to go and ask one last question, and we'll give the audience a chance to go and ask any additional questions that they are interested in. Did you have to go and make any modifications to your garage in order to service any of the vehicles, or was your existing garage already sufficient?
Yes, we did have to make some modifications. Our building, we have a unique setup. We actually, before we started getting 60-foot buses, we had all 40-footers, and we were able to park 300 buses under roof. As we start transitioning to the 60-footers, what a track that we normally could get 9 40-footers, now we can only get 6. So we had some capacity issues. And then in the maintenance bays, those were built for 40-foot buses. So we had some pony walls, and we needed to break those down, take those down so we could extend and be able to get the 60-foot buses into the bays safely. So they wouldn't be hanging out in the drive lane. So yes, we did have to do some modification. Was it a significant amount of modification? Our electric area we needed to expand for that same reason, so we could have access for the full 60-footers to be outside of the drive lane. Our tire bay, the same thing, just to make sure that we had the ease of operation and be able to get the buses out of harm's way in the drive lanes.
Thank you. And I don't see any additional questions, so I think that we can call this an end to the webinar. Well, thank you so much for joining us, to all of our speakers. This has been great, highly educational, and I really appreciate all of you taking time out of your busy schedules to be with us today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much.
I agree, Heather. Great information today. And thank you to everyone for joining us. Thank you to our attendees. Be looking for a survey to pop up as soon as the webinar closes. If you'll take just about 1 minute to answer a couple of questions for us, we'd appreciate that. And with that, we'll go ahead and wrap things up. Thanks again, everyone. Have a great rest of your day.
You
Thank
too.
Bye.